Hi, my name is Gary Bunn, and I'm the Director of CDL Services here at Nash Community College. Today we're going to be performing a tractor-trailer Class A pre-trip inspection. This is the type of inspection you should be able to perform when testing for your CDL. We're going to be performing this inspection as outlined in the North Carolina CDL Driver's Manual. We will be starting at the front of the vehicle, inspecting all items on the front of the vehicle. We will then do the right side and left side of the engine compartment, and then we will inspect the vehicle along the entire left side of the vehicle, the rear of the vehicle. Once we've completed the outside portion of the pre-trip, we will do an operational outside light check. This is where the examiner will assist you in checking the operation of all the lights on the vehicle. Once we complete the operational light check, we will begin doing the inside and startup portion of the pre-trip vehicle. This should assist you in helping you to pass for your CDL pre-trip inspection. As I said, we'll be starting with the front of the vehicle. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to check our clearance lights up top, making sure that our clearance lights are properly mounted and secure, clean, and amber in color. We're now going to move to our windshield, making sure our windshield is not cracked, broken, and has no illegal stickers. We're going to make sure that our windshield wipers are properly mounted and secure, so when we do our operational windshield wiper check. We're now going to move to our headlight and turn signal assemblies. We're going to make sure that our headlights are properly mounted and secure and clean, and our turn signals are amber in color. From that point, we're going to move under the bottom of the engine compartment at the front of the vehicle and making sure we see no leaks of any kind, including oil, radiator fluid, or water. At this time, we're going to move to the right side of the engine compartment. We're going to start off with our hoses. All of our hoses, including our air intake hoses and radiator hoses. We're going to make sure that they're properly mounted and secure. They're not cut, worn, or frayed. All the clamps are tight, and there's no leaks. We're now going to move to our turbo and exhaust. We're going to be checking our exhaust system from our turbo, and we're going to follow our exhaust system all the way to the rear of the tractor to our muffler. We're going to make sure that the exhaust system is properly mounted and secure, all the clamps are tight, and at no point is it rubbing against the fuel system. Once again, on the right side of the engine, we're going to be checking our alternator. We're going to make sure that our alternator is properly mounted and secure, our electrical connections are tight, our alternator is belt driven. We're going to check the condition of the belt to make sure it is not worn, frayed, and has no more than 3/4 inches of free play. At this time, we're going to move to the left side of the engine compartment. Once again, we're going to check all of our hoses, as our air intake hose and our lower radiator hose, making sure that they are both properly mounted and secure. Once again, they are not worn, frayed, or cut. The clamps are tight, and there are no leaks. We're going to check our coolant reservoir, making sure our coolant reservoir is properly mounted and secure, no leaks, caps are on tight, and filled to the adequate level. We're going to check our water pump. We're going to make sure that our water pump is properly mounted and secure, no broken or missing parts, no leaks. Our water pump is also belt driven, so we're going to make sure the belt, once again, is not worn, frayed, and has no more than 3/4 inches of free play. As we move back along the engine, we're going to check our oil dipstick. We would remove the dipstick, wipe it off, reinsert it, pull it back out, and check the oil level to make sure it is in the proper operating range. We will be checking our foot valve and brake line hoses to make sure that they are both properly mounted and secure, no broken or missing parts, and there are no leaks along the line. Here, we're going to come back and check our power steering fluid reservoir. We're going to make sure that our reservoir is properly mounted and secure, filled to the adequate level, and no leaks. We're going to check all of our hoses running off of our reservoir to make sure that they're also not leaking. We're going to follow our bottom hose coming off our reservoir back to our power steering pump. We're going to check our power steering pump, making sure that it is properly mounted and secure with no broken or missing parts. It has no leaks, and also it is gear driven. Sitting on top of our power steering pump, which is very hard to see, but it's our air compressor. Our air compressor is also properly mounted and secure, no broken or missing parts, no leaks, and it is also gear driven. At this time, we're going to be moving to our steering components. We're going to start with our steering shaft and universal joints on each end. We're going to make sure that the steering shaft and universal joints are properly mounted and secure with no broken or missing parts, and that the universal joints are properly lubricated. Next, we will move to our gearbox and our gearbox hoses, making sure that our gearbox and our gearbox hoses are properly mounted and secure with no leaks. From our gearbox, we're going to move to our pitman arm and drag link, making sure both our pitman arm and drag link are properly mounted and secure with no broken or missing parts, and we have our castle nut and cotter pin in place. At the rear of our steering system back here, we have our steering knuckle, lower steering arm, and tie rod, making sure that those are also properly mounted and secure with no broken or missing parts, and they are also held in place by castle nut and cotter pin. We're now going to move to our suspension system. We're going to start with our front leaf spring hanger, making sure that our front leaf spring hanger is properly mounted and secure with no broken or missing parts. The next item is our leaf springs. We're going to check our leaf springs to make sure that they are not cracked, shifted, or broken. Next, we will be checking our U-bolts and nuts, making sure that our U-bolts or nuts are tight and there's no signs of shifting to indicate a loose U-bolt. Our shock absorber and shock absorber mount, making sure both of those are properly mounted and secure with no broken or missing parts, and our shock absorber shows no signs of leakage. And next, we would check our rear leaf spring hanger, making sure that it is also properly mounted and secure with no broken or missing parts. From there, we're going to move to our braking system. We're going to start with our brake hose, making sure that our brake hose is properly mounted and secure with no leaks. Our brake chamber is properly mounted and secure with no broken or missing parts, and there are no leaks. Our push rod and slack adjuster both are properly mounted and secure, pin in place, and make sure that the push rod and slack adjuster have no more than 1 inch of free play with the brakes released. On the inside of the wheel, we're going to be checking our brake shoes and our brake drum. First off, we're checking our brake shoes to make sure that they are not worn dangerously thin, and we would check our brake drums to make sure we see no cracks, no welds, or no grease or oil. From there, we're going to be moving to our tire. We're going to start with the tread area of our tire. We're going to make sure that it is evenly worn and there is a minimum of 4 30-seconds of tread depth in each major groove. We're going to check the inside and outside walls of our tire to make sure that there are no abrasions, bulges, or cuts. We would check our tire pressure with a pressure gauge, and while we're at it, we're going to check our valve stem to make sure it's properly mounted and secure and contains a cap. We're now going to move to the rim area. We're going to check the inside and outside of our rim to make sure that there are no cracks and no welds. We're going to be checking our lug nuts, all of our lug nuts, to make sure that they are tight and there are no rust streaks or shiny threads that would indicate a loose lug nut. We're going to be checking our hub oil seal to make sure it's properly mounted and secure, all bolts are tight, there are no leaks, and it is filled to the adequate level. All right, first off, I'm going to start with my turn signal and four-way flasher on the side of my vehicle, making sure that it's properly mounted and secure, clean, and amber in color. Next, I would check my mirror assembly, making sure that my mirror is properly mounted and secure to the door. I would check the mirrors themselves to make sure that they are clean and contain no cracks. At this time, I'm going to be checking the door handle, make sure that it will properly open the door. As I open the door, I'm going to check the door hinges, making sure that the door hinges will support the weight of the door. While I'm still got the door open, I would make sure that my rubber seal, both around the door and around the cab, are properly mounted and secure with no tears along the seal. While I'm here, I'm going to check my fire extinguisher, which is part of my emergency equipment. I'm going to make sure that my fire extinguisher is properly mounted and secure, that it is fully charged and properly rated. While I am checking my emergency equipment, I'm going to go ahead and finish, because here in my side box, I have the remaining emergency equipment. I have 3 reflective triangles and spare fuses inside of this box right here. The next area we'll check will be our fuel tank. We're going to check our fuel tank to make sure it's properly mounted and secure. We're going to check our tank straps to make sure our tank straps are tight, properly mounted and secure, and have the rubber seal between the strap and the tank. We're also going to be looking for any shiny marks along the strap to indicate or to show whether or not the tank has been moving. We're going to check our fuel cap area. We would actually remove our fuel cap. We would check under the inside, making sure that it has a rubber seal and a chain in place. We would also back away from the fuel tank, checking under the bottom of the fuel tank to make sure that it contained no leaks. At this time, we're going to be moving to the back of our cab. We're going to start up top and make sure that our DOT reflective material is located on both sides of the vehicle. We're now going to move down the cab and we're going to start with our air and electrical lines. First off, we're going to make sure that our electrical line is connected both to the tractor and the trailer. We're also going to check our air lines to make sure they also are both connected to the tractor and to the trailer. We're also going to be checking our air and electrical lines to make sure that the electrical line is not worn or frayed, the air lines are not twisted, crimped, or restrict air in any flow, and that it either is touching the catwalk or the frame. We would check our glad hands at our trailer connections to make sure that they're properly mounted and secure and they each contain a rubber seal. At this time, we're going to be moving down to our catwalk and our steps. We're going to make sure that our catwalk is properly mounted and secure to the frame. There's no foreign debris like grease or oil that could cause us to slip or fall. We're going to be checking our steps to make sure our steps are properly mounted and secure and support the weight of the driver. On the inside of the frame, we're going to be checking our drive shaft and universal joints, making sure that our drive shaft and universal joints are properly mounted and secure and the universal joints are properly lubricated. Back here on top of the on top of the axle, we're going to be checking our torsion bar to make sure that our torsion bar is properly mounted and secure. And last but not least, before moving on, we're going to be checking our tractor frame. We're going to make sure that our frame is properly mounted and secure, has no cracks or illegal welds. First off, we're going to move to our suspension and start with our leaf spring hanger. We're going to make sure that the hanger is properly mounted and secure, no broken or missing parts, and all the bolts are tight. Next, we're going to move to our leaf spring, making sure once again that our leaf spring is not cracked, shifted, or broken. Our U-bolts and nuts, making sure that they're tight, there's no indication of shifting along the U-bolt to show that the springs are loose. We're going to move to our shock absorber and shock absorber mounts, making sure that they're properly mounted and secure, no broken or missing parts, and there are no leaks along the shock. We're now going to move to our airbag and airbag mounts. Our airbag is properly mounted and secure, no leaks. Our airbag mounts along the top and the bottom are both properly mounted and secure with no broken or missing parts. At this time, we're going to be moving to the brake system. For our brake system, we're going to start with our brake hose, making sure it's properly mounted and secure with no leaks. We then move to our brake chamber, making sure that our brake chamber is properly mounted and secure, no broken or missing parts, no leaks. Coming out of our brake chamber, we have our push rod and slack adjuster, making sure that our push rod and slack adjuster is properly mounted and secure, has the pin in place, and it has no more than 1 inch of movement with the brakes released. We're now going to move inside to our brake shoes and brake drums. Our brake shoes are properly mounted and secure, not worn dangerously thin. Our brake drums have no cracks, no welds, no excessive grease or oil. We're then going to move to our tires. First off, we refer to these as dual tires. We're going to be checking in between the dual tires to make sure that the tires is not touching, there's no debris lodged in between the two, and there is no space between the Bunn rims. Then we will move to the tread area of the tires. We're going to make sure that they're evenly worn. They have a minimum of 2 30-seconds of tread depth along each major groove. We're going to check the inner and outer walls of both of our tires to make sure that there are no abrasions or bulges or cuts. Next, we would move to our valve stem, where along our valve stem, we would be checking our tire pressure with a pressure gauge. And while we're at it, we're checking our valve stem to make sure it's properly mounted and secure with no leaks and is equipped with a cap. We would then move to our rims. We would check the inner and outer rim, making sure that there are no cracks, no welds along the rim. We will be checking our lug nuts, making sure that our lug nuts are tight, There are no rust streaks or shiny threads to indicate a loose lug nut. Our axle seal, making sure it's properly mounted and secure. All bolts are in place and there are no leaks. Before moving along, the last thing we're going to check here is our splash guard. We're going to make sure that our splash guard is properly mounted and secure and not rubbing up against the tires. At this time, we're going to move to our coupling area. We're going to start with our trailer apron, making sure that our trailer apron is not cracked, bent, or broken. Check the top of our skid plate to make sure it's properly lubricated and there is no gap or daylight showing between the trailer apron and the skid plate. Next, we would move to our locking reliever, or pull handle as it's referred to making sure that it is in the lock position. Here we have a sliding fifth wheel, so we got to make sure that the locking pins for the sliding fifth wheel are locked in the lock position. We also want to make sure that the sliding fifth wheel is positioned so that when we make turns, the landing gear will not strike the mud flaps. We're also going to be checking our platform, making sure our platform is properly mounted and secure with no broken or missing parts, and all bolts are in place and tight. We would then move to the rear of the fifth wheel. At the back of the fifth wheel, we would check to ensure that the locking jaws are locked around the shank of the kingpin and that the kingpin is properly mounted and secure, is not cracked, bent, or broken. Next, we're going to be checking our mud flap to make sure it's properly mounted and secure, not touching the ground when fully loaded, and has the required DOT reflective tape. Now we're going to move to all of our lights. We're going to be checking our tail lights, turn signals, four-way flashers, brake lights, and reverse light, making sure that they're all properly mounted and secure and clean. Our reflectors, properly mounted and secure and clean. Okay, at this time we're going to move to the header board of our trailer. We're going to make sure that the header board contains no visible damage, no missing rivets, no cuts along the panels. Our registration box, making sure it's properly mounted and secure. On the side of the trailer, we're going to start at the top of the trailer. First off, we're going to be checking our clearance light up top to make sure it's properly mounted and secure, clean, amber in color. We will check our upper frame rail and our lower frame rail, making sure that it's properly mounted and secure and contains no cracks. We're going to be checking our DOT reflective tape to make sure it covers at least 50% along the entire side of the trailer. At this time, we're going to be moving to our landing gear and landing gear frame assembly. We're going to start with our landing gear frame to make sure it's properly mounted and secure, has no broken or missing parts, and all bolts are in place. We're going to check our landing gear assembly, making sure it's properly mounted and secure. The leg is in the fully raised position. There is no debris along the foot plate, and our crank handle is in the secure position. As we move down the side of the trailer, here I have a turn signal, making sure that my turn signal is properly mounted and secure, clean, amber in color. At this time, we will be moving to the trailer frame and tandem sliding area. I'm going to be checking my frame to make sure it has no cracks or illegal welds. This is a sliding tandem, so the first thing I'm going to do, and this one is air assisted, is make sure that my locking handle or locking mechanism is in the lock position, and all of my locking pins for my sliding tandem are in the lock position. I'm going to be checking my brake line hoses or air line hoses to make sure that they're properly mounted and secure and at least 18 inches off the ground. Back here, we're going to check our suspension. On this trailer, we have an air ride suspension. So the first thing we're going to be doing is checking our shock absorber and shock absorber mount, making sure that they're properly mounted and secure and no leaks. Our airbag and airbag mounts, making sure that they are both properly mounted and secure with no leaks. We will now move to our braking system. We're going to start with our brake hose, making sure our brake hose is properly mounted and secure with no leaks. Our brake chamber, making sure our brake chamber is properly mounted and secure, has no leaks. Our push rod and slack adjuster, making sure that they are both properly mounted and secure, no broken or missing parts, pins in place, and will move no more than 1 inch with the brakes released. On the inside, our brake shoes and brake drums. Our brake shoes are not worn dangerously thin. Our brake drums have no cracks, no welds, and no grease or oil. Once again, we're going to be checking our trailer tires, our dual tires. We're going to be checking in between the tire to make sure the tires are not touching. There's no debris lodged in between the tires, and our dual rims have no space between them. Our tread on both tires, making sure it's properly evenly worn, has a minimum of 2 30-seconds of tread depth along each major groove. Our inner and outer sidewalls, making sure there are no abrasions, bulges, or cuts. Once again, our valve stem, we would check it with a pressure gauge, making sure that the tires are at the recommended level. We would also check our valve stem, making sure it's properly mounted and secure with no leaks and contains a cap. We would check our rims to make sure our rims are not bent, cracked, and no welds. Our lug nuts, all of our lug nuts, making sure that they're tight, there's no rust streaks or shiny thread that would indicate a loose lug nut. Our oil hub, making sure it's properly mounted and secure, all bolts are tight, there are no leaks, and filled to the adequate level. Next, we're going to be checking our mud flap on our trailer, making sure it's properly mounted and secure, not touching the ground when fully loaded. As we continue moving along the side of the trailer, here I have my door tied. This is where I will hook my door chain to when the doors are open, making sure it's properly mounted and secure and will support the weight of the door. As I move along the rear, my ABS light, making sure my ABS light is properly mounted and secure, clean, amber in color, and my rear corner marker light is properly mounted and secure and clean. At this time, we will move to the rear of the trailer. Starting at the rear of the trailer, we're going to start with the trailer doors. First, we're going to check all of our door hinges, making sure our door hinges are properly mounted and secure, not cracked or broken. We're going to be checking our door seal, making sure our door seal completely surrounds all 4 sides of the door. We're going to move to our door handles and door latch assembly, making sure that they are properly mounted and secure and in the closed position. Our door ties, making sure our door ties are properly mounted and secure and make sure that they would support the weight of the door when attached to the side of the trailer. Our DOT reflective tape, make sure we have 100% coverage along the rear of the trailer. We're now going to move to the lights on the rear of the trailer. We're going to start out with our tail lights, turn signals, four-way flashers, brake lights, and up top we have our 5 marker lights. We're going to make sure all of those are properly mounted and secure and clean. We're going to make sure that our license plate light is properly mounted and secure and clean. As I explained earlier, now that we have finished doing the outside check of the vehicle, at this time you will ask the examiner to assist you with doing an outside operational light check of the vehicle. You will notify the examiner that you're going to start with the front of the vehicle. You will cut on all lights, tell the examiner what lights you're checking as you cut them on, and then you will do the same thing for the rear of the vehicle. At this time, on the front of the vehicle, we're going to start with our clearance lights up top. Our headlights, high beam and low beam. We're going to check our left turn signal, our right turn signal, and our four-way flashers. At this time, you would ask the examiner to move to the rear of the vehicle. At the rear of the vehicle, first off, we would check our tail lights. We would check our marker lights up top. We would also check our license plate light. We would check our left turn signal, our right turn signal, our four-way flashers, our brake lights. At this point, we will now begin the inside portion of the pre-trip inspection. First off, on the inside of the cab, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to check our seat belt. We're going to make sure that our seat belt is not worn or frayed and it will properly restrain the driver. The next thing we're going to check is our side view mirrors. We've already checked to make sure that they're properly mounted and secure, but on the inside, I want to make sure that the mirrors are adjusted for me, the driver. The next thing I'm going to check is my windshield once again upon closer examination to make sure that there are no chips, cracks, breaks, or any illegal stickers. At this time, I'm going to be performing a safe start of the vehicle. I'm going to make sure that the transmission is in neutral. I'm going to depress the clutch, let the gauges cycle through. I'm also going to check and make sure that my ABS light comes on and goes off, letting me know that my ABS system is working properly. And now I'm going to start the vehicle. Upon starting the vehicle, I'm going to be checking all of my gauges. At this time, I'm going to be checking my oil pressure, making sure it is in the proper operating range. My water temperature, making sure it is in the proper operating range. My primary and secondary air pressure gauges to make sure that they are operating in the proper operating range. My voltmeter, making sure that I have adequate voltage on the vehicle. I'm going to be checking my left turn signal indicator, my right turn signal indicator, my four-way flasher indicator, and my high beam indicator. At this time, I'm going to be checking my city horn and my air horn. I would also check my windshield wipers and washers to make sure that they're working properly. I would also make sure that my defroster is working properly and my heater is working properly. And at this time, I'm now going to perform my brake check. At this time, we're going to be checking our parking brakes to make sure that they will adequately hold the vehicle when engaged. We're going to start off with our trailer brakes. I'm going to release my tractor brakes, put my vehicle in low gear, and just perform a tug test to make sure the brakes will hold. Very good. Now I'm going to be checking my tractor parking brakes. I'm going to release my trailer brakes, perform a tug test once again to make sure that the tractor parking brakes will hold. As they do. Now I'm going to do a service brake test. I'm going to release both parking brakes. We're going to move the vehicle ahead about 5 feet and then apply the service brakes to make sure it will stop the vehicle. As we move forward and stop the vehicle. At this time, I am getting ready to perform my lab test. I am going to cut the vehicle off. Once the engine stops, I'm now going to cut the switch into the accessory position, and now I'm going to begin my lab test. I will be checking for leaks, alarms, and buttons. First, for leaks, I'm going to apply pressure to the brake pedal. I'm going to make sure that my air pressure gauges loses no more than 4 pounds of pressure in 1 minute. I'm just going to start counting. 1001, 1002. I lost no more than 4 pounds of pressure. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to check my low air pressure warning alarm. I'm going to make sure when I pump my brakes down at 60 pounds of pressure, my low air warning alarm should come on or activate. My low air pressure warning alarm has activated. The final portion of the lab test, the button test, I'm going to make sure that my air parking brakes should activate when my air pressure drops to around 40 pounds. And my parking brakes have activated. And that completes my pre-trip inspection.